This is episode 38 with Pedram Shojai. Welcome to My Kid Cures Cancer. I'm Ryan Sternagel, childhood cancer navigator and health advocate. Each week we'll talk to a new expert on healing cancer or human optimization to bring you one step closer on your path to preventing or reversing cancer and attaining true health. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now let's dive into this life-saving information you're not going to hear about in the hospital. What does it mean to draw your sword to fight cancer? We're about to find out with Dr. Pedram Shojai, the founder of Well.org, editor of Be More magazine, and the creator of the Urban Monk program and website. He is a doctor of Oriental medicine, a Qigong master, student of Kung Fu and Tai Chi, and a former Taoist monk. Combining holistic, ancient Eastern practices with practical everyday application for modern life, he has years of experience helping busy people restyle their lives to focus on wellness and happiness. He is the author of Rise and Shine, The Urban Monk, and The Art of Stopping Time, Practical Mindfulness for Busy People. He is the producer and director of the movies Vitality, Origins, and Prosperity. Pedram and his work have been featured on CNN, The Today Show, and Women's Health Magazine, The Huffington Post, and more. I joked with Pedram at the end of this interview that I was going to have a hard time figuring out what to title it, and summarizing it is a bit of a challenge as well, but first and foremost, I can say that if you are going through cancer in any way, be it with yourself or a loved one, this is stuff you really need to hear. We talked about the concept of time as the currency of life. Pedram explained how going through cancer is an opportunity to rearrange your priorities to use that currency in a way that truly serves you. And there was a lot of really good conversation, both from a mindset and perception standpoint and a practical implementation standpoint on managing to accomplish everything that needs to get done when actually dealing with that diagnosis. Pedram explained the two choices you have with the cancer diagnosis are to either fear death or embrace life, and if you do choose the latter, how to get the most out of it in a way most likely to lead to a successful cancer journey. And we even managed to fit in how to not only avoid most things in the world that will bring you harm, but even how to change those things. As always, we're glad you stopped by My Kid Cures Cancer. It is our goal here to bring all sides of the conversation on how to heal cancer and be truly healthy to the same table to give you one place to tune into for the most well-rounded perspective possible. This is a show for people going through cancer, by people going through cancer, inspired by my wife Teddy and I's experience with childhood cancer, bringing our son Ryder back from a stage 4 cancer diagnosis to the happy, healthy little boy he is today. If you aren't dealing with cancer and want to keep it that way, this show will probably be a good idea for you to listen to as well. We'll get to Pedram in just a minute, but before we do, I do need to tell you that the information you hear on this show is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for medical diagnosis, advice, or treatment. Only commentary out of me this week is welcome back to the show from the break, everyone. I hope you are making the most of your new year. We've got some new stuff we've been working on in the meantime that we're very excited to tell you about. But for now, I'll just say keep your eye on mykidcurescancer.com and especially the YouTube channel, as we've been making a whole lot more videos on everything we do personally to stay anti-cancer. And with that, I will bring you Pedram Shojai. Welcome back, everyone, to My Kid Cures Cancer. We have with us Pedram Shojai. Pedram, how are you? Thanks for coming on the show.
Doing great. Hi.
Hey. So this is I'm excited for this episode, like we were just talking about before. This show is all about tools for people going through cancer, and most of our interviews are with naturopathic oncologists or cancer clinic owners or folks from the Truth About Cancer that have very strong opinions on cancer, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it's from the patient's perspective, and it's to help people. After going through this for 3+ years now, you get a good sense of what people need and what I wish I would have had, earlier on, or the mindset that I would have had, and just everything you're up to is like we were just talking about. I think there's a lot to talk about, but I suppose that all being said, just for anyone that doesn't know, would you like to give everyone a quick rundown just on everything Pedram Shojai is up to these days, and what your place in the world is, I suppose.
Yeah, well, that's a loaded question. We're going to be here for a while. I am actually in a deceleration phase. I just, hatched 3 eggs this year. Was really in a busy creative mode, and I've learned the hard way that if you don't slow down and kind of catch your breath after something like that, then you will pay the price. And so, just launched a movie that we finished, took 2 years to make. Finished my 3rd book and released it, and finished an audio program. So, 2017 was a big, busy kind of like create and share year. And so now kind of going into hibernation mode, basically spending a lot more time with my family this year. And, doing some writing, doing some, lecturing and stuff, but just slowing the hell down, because it's been, if you're always going, you will crash. And so, you got to make sure that you leave those recovery cycles in. And so, the world doesn't need Pedram Shojai creating new content right now. It needs him kind of breathing to his navel and catching his breath and, being the dad he intends to be. So, just running well.org and doing, just live calls with our urban monk people once a week, and really just kind of slowing my roll.
Exact opposite of me.
Yeah.
But we're really excited with everything we're doing on the show. Not the show, but just My Kid Cures Cancer in general. Especially after hanging out with some folks like yourself that have been doing this for a long time. It's given us a lot of really great ideas on where we want to take everything and what we want to do with it. So it's going to be hyperdrive for me for the next year or so. But it's a good thing.
Well,
if only I could find out how to get
eat lots of vegetables.
Yeah, lots of vegetables and optimize what sleep I do get. That's for sure.
Right. That's it. It's a marathon.
Yep. So all that being said, speaking of marathons, that's a good transition. Like we were talking about. I think there's a few topics I want to touch on with you, but cancer itself is a marathon. And your latest project, your latest book, Art of Stopping Time, I don't think would be the very first thing I'd recommend to somebody. It'd probably be something like naturopathic oncology or something along those lines. But after you've kind of gotten those basics under you, just trying to figure out where the time in the day goes, and you're trying to do your research, and you're trying to take your supplements, and you're trying to get outside, and maybe showing up to treatments or whatever. Time just it escapes.
Yeah,
it escapes. It escapes really fast, and I'm excited to I just bought your book, and I'm excited to go through it myself, because there's a lot, like I just said, there's a lot we're trying to do, and I certainly can't find the time to do it. But for someone going through cancer, it's that's a whole different ball of wax.
Well, it's also, look, time is the currency of life, and time is all we got. And when you get a cancer diagnosis, that ticker starts ticking way faster, and it really makes you think about your mortality, and it really makes you think about all the big questions, because whatever your expected life expectancy was supposed to be, that thing just got really brought under a microscope and questioned and challenged. And so now time becomes very relevant to someone with a cancer diagnosis or someone living with someone with a cancer diagnosis, because you have to value every second you have, either with that person or in your own life, and how you spend that time becomes incredibly amplified in value.
Yeah, indeed. It's you want to be present and actually taking in the life that you have, or the life that you have with that person, because a lot of caregivers and parents and stuff like that listen to this show too. Or if you're the one with cancer, you want to be making sure you're making the most of your life, which is it's tough, because you're also trying to figure out how to get a lot of stuff done and make sure you have a long life to come. So that being said, I mean, the Art of Stopping Time, what you talk about there is pretty much, if I'm correct in it, it's figuring out ways to make more time for yourself and also perceive more time for yourself. Do you want to just kind of elaborate on that and like, what those, I suppose those general concepts?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's heavy stuff. And so over 100 days, we take a walk through your life, whether, look, 100 days from now, you're going to be 100 days older either way. So how about we look at life through this lens of time for 100 days with a little exercise every single day of just how to look at things differently and understand that, look, we trade time, energy, and money pretty openly on an exchange, right? So you go put all your time in at some desk to make this thing called money, and then hopefully buy yourself more life and sustenance and time with it. But most people are decadent with their expenditures and spend their money like morons, and then wonder why they don't have any money and what then they got to put more time into it, and so that exchange needs to come under question. And the other one is like, look, you only have a certain amount of heartbeats. I don't care whether you have cancer, leukemia, or just nothing. Look, you get hit by a bus tomorrow, right? And so you only have a certain amount of heartbeats in life. And so the question is, where are you investing them, right? And how are you living this thing called life? And what is your actual prosperity definition? It's not just money, right? It's time with your family, it's walking the dogs, it's taking hikes, whatever that is to you. And are you living that life now? And what do you need to be doing to savor this thing called life? And, through the currency of this thing called time while you're living now. I think, we're all living in an era where humanity is suffering from a spiritual malady. We just don't know who we are. We don't know what we want. We don't know what life is about. We walk around like zombies thinking we need this because everyone else, on TV wants that. And so none of these fundamentals come under question. And so then, we just walk through life like hungry ghosts. And so, you get something, and a lot of people, might see it as a curse, but oftentimes it could also be seen as a blessing. Like a cancer diagnosis is just like rattles you to the core, and it's just like, yo, stop right now. Nothing that mattered to you yesterday no longer it matters anymore. And if it does, then you haven't really gotten this lesson. It's like, yo, wake up. Everything is different starting now.
Yeah,
and so
who
are you going to be?
Addicted to like news and the Drudge Report and all that stuff. And I probably looked at, check Drudge on my phone like 10 times a day. And then I get that diagnosis, and all of a sudden it's like 6 months later, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll check the news. And the app was like, it didn't even work on my phone anymore because, it's like, oh, okay. So that's, yeah. And it's been, I haven't really cared that much about the news ever since. So.
Yeah, you were overindulgent in something that didn't really matter. And so what really matters is the life of your child, the well-being of your family, and the ongoing pursuit of happiness. And so those things kind of get lost behind saying, I really, this Hyundai SUV isn't enough for my family because the Joneses got, a BMW, or, my kid needs these clothes or whatever. And so it's like, all these things they fall off when stuff gets real. Life gets real with a diagnosis like that, and it makes you have to stop in time and pay attention. And so it's a gift in a lot of ways to say, okay, great. What is important, right? What am I eating? What are we doing for sleep? Is this stress killing me, right? And so one of the things that happens is, there's a couple ways to go with this. Is you either fear death or you find life, right? And that's why, some of this naturopathic oncology is an interesting path, right? Is you get a diagnosis of cancer, and then the med heads are just like, great, call in the airstrikes. We got this, eat the donuts. It doesn't matter. We're just going to, we're going to take your house and we're going to poison you, and hopefully you survive and the cancer's gone for 5 years, right? Versus, let's go find the origins of this problem. Let's look at your detoxification systems. Look, I'm a doctor of Oriental medicine. I've been in medicine, most of my life before I became a filmmaker and author. And I've been around a lot of disease, right? And so it's a question of boosting the vitality. It's a question of having practices that are life affirming, that help support the body's innate capacity to detoxify and heal itself. And so then you become a life junkie, right? Like you start to basically walk back towards the light and really find all the places you can heal yourself, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, physically, right? And in that, there are all sorts of lessons that get unpacked and all sorts of really kind of miraculous healings that people report in pursuing this thing called life, which is kind of something that emanates from within. Or you could just be like, oh my God, the doctor said, if I don't do everything he says, I'm going to die in 2 years. And so you just go into this kind of fear-oriented tailspin, and that's usually not the healthiest path. I'm not saying certain interventions aren't worth doing, but that mindset, man, that stress from that mindset will kill you faster than the cancer.
Yeah. I just kind of realized that I've found myself saying lately, and I just wanted to say it now, that the more I research cancer, the less I actually think about cancer. And the more I'm just interested in how is the body supposed to be functioning, how is the energy supposed to be flowing, how, what does it take to be the optimal human and mind, body, and soul. And then sure enough, you dig into the studies on whatever it is you're thinking about, and there's probably something related to cancer in there.
Yeah. And all you really need to do is kick it old school, right? You go like, okay, so how does life work? The sun hits the leaves, they photosynthesize, they turn it into energy, we consume that energy, and then we grow ourselves and feed our body, and there's excretion, and there's ingestion, and there's water. And so you just go back to like clean water, clean food, making sure you're going to the bathroom right, you're sleeping right, you get all those basics started off again, and you reset that. And then you go back and you got to shake the skeletons out of the closet. And as you do so, then the game isn't about like defeating this cancer. The game is about unraveling how you ended up there in the first place and helping your body and your mind, your soul find a way back out, right? In a way that's healthy. It's life affirming. So it's about becoming the new you, not doing everything you can to preserve the old you. The old you is no longer allowed to persist in that way.
Yeah. No, that's and it's it's for people going through cancer, or caregivers of parents, same sort of thing. I've had to. I'm not the same person that I was in college. Maybe a little bit. I've always been a little bit of a I didn't really care for rules and such, and that has actually served me well, in this new life as well. But in a more productive way, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Well, and also, it's something I want to speak to here, because I think a lot of people, when they hear this stuff, they're like, oh, now I have to change my identity. It's like, look at you, you're still a normal dude. You didn't like change your name to Sri Deva and start dressing differently, and being like all weird and smelling like patchouli either, right? Like a lot of people think that they have to like cross over and like pretend they're a shaman to like be this new person that's now like and all that is just cultural baggage and nonsense. It's like, just open your mind to where health really comes from, right? Whether you're faith-based or medicine-based or whatever, and find the way out of clearing the cobwebs, right? Clear the cobwebs, get out of your own way, come back to life.
Yeah. No, it's a good way to put it. It's a really good way to put it. So yeah, that being said, I want to make sure. So we talk about, I guess finding time to do all of this stuff. It's like you said, a lot of the kind of high level junk gets cleared away just by necessity. I mean, like I said, I was looking at Drudge Report all the time, and now I'm not looking at Drudge Report. And that sort of thing. But then when you start digging into, okay, what are all of these things that I need to be addressing between the nutrition and cleaning out your life and cleaning out your mind and all that, it gets overwhelming. It gets really overwhelming. Do you have, in the context of Artist Stopping Time, if you want, but just, any thoughts on how to kind of prioritize this stuff in the midst of more or less a crisis? I mean, it's a marathon, but at the same time, you feel like you have to do everything overnight.
Yeah, and that is incredibly overwhelming, and it's actually disruptive because it won't get you to the promised land. So it's about setting up new micro habits and resetting the table, right? So when you get a cancer diagnosis, when you get something that is, big and scary, what you really need to do is just clear everything off the table and be like, okay, what's important to me? My diet. Great. So you start assembling your life around diet, whether it's like, juicing in the morning, gardening, out in the yard, whatever that is, right? You set up your rituals around diet, around movement, around, maybe it's around treatment, right? You might be too far gone. You might need to like go in for treatment, and that, sucks, right? Then you're, feeling all crappy because of chemo. And so, whatever that is, you start to assemble your life around, okay, what is the core thing that I must do to not survive, but to turn this around and thrive? Right. So if your attitude is, I want to beat the cancer so that I could go back to whatever the heck of the Drudge Report, then, you're going to likely lose, because that's not a winning strategy. You're just buying time. Right. And you haven't let go of the person. Like, you have to. Here's the thing, cancer makes us feel terrified because we have to confront our mortality, and we're so afraid of dying. But the you that is the real you never dies, right? There's an eternal quality to the human spirit that's transcendent, right? And so that part of you isn't afraid at all. So the part of you that's afraid of dying, there are lots of places there that are opportunities to explore your reluctance to let that part die, right? There's certain parts of us that have needed to die for years. And those parts that we've held on to, those are the ones that are, kind of slowing down the flow of the river and getting gunked up, right? So, I actually have a very different approach to this. Is like, let's die to that, right? Let's die to this cancer diagnosis right now. And then what's reborn is the parts of you that you didn't need to be dragging on for all these years, right? And so you just got to start letting go and letting the earth mulch, if you will, the parts of you that no longer serve you. And the more you die to your eternal self, the more you come to life, right? And whatever religious or spiritual tradition you come from, that's what it really boils down to, is die to your eternal self so that your true self, the part of you that really, really is the life force, is there shining. And then there's really, depending on how far gone you are, there's just no room for the cancer to hang out there with that person.
I like that. I like that a lot. Are there, so I suppose it necessitates explaining what a gong is, but your book goes through 100 days and 100 different gongs. Excuse me. Are there any gongs in your mind from the book that really, come to mind that jump out as like, something really important for someone going, like maybe, I don't know if you'd start with your gong one and just go through the order, or under these conditions, are there a few that people could take away right now and do that come to mind for you?
The book was written for someone living a human life, right? So every aspect of human lives are just so multifaceted, right? That, one day we're talking about food, one day we're talking about stepping outside and like looking at the birds, and other days it's about looking at your calendar and saying, okay, you tell me you value, diet and exercise, and like you say yoga is an important thing to you. Give me your phone. Let's go look inside your phone and see where you've booked exercise or yoga on your calendar. Oh, really? It's not there? No wonder you never do it, right? And so there's certain kind of like lifetime management principles. Look, I'm the CEO of a big company, and, I run 3 companies and make movies. Like I'm no stranger to like, business stress and payroll and all these things. So it's like, what? Like I know how to do time management better than most. And I can tell you most people suck because they do not manage their time well at all. So there are certain just kind of like time hygiene principles in there, but just the thing that comes to mind that is, again, it's always the best teacher in my assessment of this has always been nature. Nature is where we come from. Nature is simple, nature is pure, and nature is also, predatory. And you watch the cycles of life in nature, you see things are born and things die, and things have to survive. And so, it's very real. And so, there's a lot we can learn from nature, and nature helps us kind of come back to ourselves. So there's, listen, you could go into a million different directions with this. Is you go into the rhizosphere and you understand that the bacteria on the hike are actually replenishing the bacteria in your gut and bringing you back to a symbiotic relationship with life. You're breathing fresh air. You're under the sunlight. There's so many powerful things that are supposed to be happening with us spending time in nature that we don't get when we're locked in these boxes, right? Breathing stale air and all these things that, have led to a lot of these cancer diagnoses, right? And so getting out to nature as often as possible, learning from the simplicity of nature, sleeping under the stars, all these things I think are, tantamount to a really important life hygiene upgrade, which is back to the basics, learn from nature, right? And so there's a lot of the gongs that revolve around just stepping out more often.
Yeah, no, that's great. There's a couple of things you said there that, I'm glad you said. I mean, just let me see your phone. Did you put it on your calendar? I mean, I think, most people, I stress so hard with everyone that we work with that you need a schedule. Because it's something that, a lot of people just they don't have the concept of these days. It's, they go to work, they come home, they watch TV and that's it. And now all of a sudden they're thrust into this diagnosis and they're, trying to figure out all these different things at once. And it's, you have to schedule time and especially, you got all these different supplements you're trying to take. You're trying to get outside. You're trying to, make your treatments or do whatever you're doing. That's one thing I really you gotta put all this stuff down on paper and then you have to figure out how you're going to fit it all in the week. And, that right there in itself, I think is huge for people. And,
yeah, there's something on that note though that I want to talk about, just because, I've been around the block, the challenge with that is I've watched people go into this death spiral over self-care rituals that are so overwhelming because they're like, just trying to stuff, they have this like morning begging bowl filled with supplements, and then they got to do this, then they go to the sauna, then they go to their drip, and it gets to the point where they're like, man, this sucks, right? And so life was tedious before cancer, and now life after cancer is even more tedious because you get all this health crap you got to do all the time, right? And you're like, man, I don't have time for anything, right? And so for me, when I see that becomes a function of a guaranteed failure, because that is not an operating system upgrade. Because the person who's like feeling diminished by this tedious schedule is like, I got all this health crap, and I listen to the dialogue, and I could tell where their orientation is around it. Is when I hear that, then I know that they're in this woe is me kind of feeling sorry for themselves mentality, and I know that the operating system isn't already booted into a winning game, right? This is about changing the fundamentals of who I am and becoming healthy and developing a robust sense of life and filling myself with vitality and enthusiasm and waking up to the person that I'm destined to be and stepping through this with kind of encouraging enthusiasm. It's like, damn, now I got more stuff to do and I hate this, right? And that attitude right there diminishes and probably cancels out 40% of the value of the supplements alone, right? And so, if you don't change your operating system, if you don't fundamentally change the game that you're playing to be winning at this thing, you're going to feel sorry for yourself and you're going to self-sabotage. And I've seen it time and again. So I think, again, I'm not here to tell people what they want to hear. I'm just, I'm known for being blunt. If you don't change your operating system, you're in trouble.
So when we talk about, that in light of, at the end of the day, still having to get a lot of stuff done and make a lot of changes and figure out what changes it is you need to make. Would that in your mind be scheduling in time to just sit back and work on changing this stuff? Or how would you actually implement becoming a new person and changing your operating system? You know what I mean?
That's a great question. So I like Gestalt types of therapies that are, tried and true. Like, Stan Grof has been doing holotropic breathing for a long time. I love the primal scream. There are certain types, even like rebirthing from Leonard Orr, there are certain types of like breath work exercises that go deep into someone's psyche and just allow you to cry it out and like just find those demons and face them and come come clean with all of the stuff that you've been holding on to in the past. And I got to say, the people that make the quantum leaps, in my experience, and look, I've been a priest for years, I've been a doctor for years, again, I used to have a lot of hair, I've been around this block. The people that make the quantum leaps are the people that will face themselves and go all the way to that point where they will lay their old self on the sacrificial altar of death and allow their true self to be born, which means facing your demons and coming clean with your past. And there's a lot of different, ways to climb that mountain. But if you're not on that hike, then you're just like sitting around eating supplements, complaining about your lot in life.
Yeah. No, that is a really good way to put it. And, people have made similar comments on the show, but it's like, you're either in it to win it and, letting everything else go or not.
Yeah. You're just passing time. You're waiting to die. Right. And that's not a winning strategy. Look, I'm a martial artist. I've been in Kung Fu my whole life. And, I don't fight. Right. I don't get into fights. I'm a really nice guy. I'm a teddy bear of a guy. Like I will not be engaged in any sort of conflict. But if I'm drawn into a conflict, it's because it's life or death, which means draw your sword and bring out the warrior. So when you get a cancer diagnosis and you don't draw your sword, then you are just laying down to die because something is coming to get you. It is a call to action, right? For me, when you're drawn on the battlefield, you are now a warrior. So now what is worth fighting for? Like for you, it's a different scenario because it's your kid. And so it's drawing you into a battle for your kid, right? But if it's yourself, you're fighting for yourself. If you're fighting for your kid, then you're fighting for your kid. So you have to find the love and the value and the kind of the personal capital, the spiritual equity, if you will, in this thing, and make this fight your fight. Like you are willing to win or die trying, right? But anything less means you're just going to slowly die a miserable death, right? And that's how that works, right? You charge, you step in, you say, this is my new life, this is my new self, and that radical upgrade in your operating system allows for the real you to come out. It allows for joy and life to be found underneath all of this kind of calamity. And then then the butterfly is born.
Yeah. And I think that's important. It's an important point, kind of back to what I was just saying, or what I was trying to say is, I'm all about on this show, bringing it back to like specific tools and, you need to be looking at this, you need to be looking at that and all that stuff. But really it's deciding, you listen to a couple interviews like this, you really kind of wrap your mind around, okay, I'm going to decide to do this. And once you really decide to do it, you start getting drawn to what you need to be drawn to. And, we've had a couple of those more, what's the word I'm looking for? Esoteric, energetic conversations on the show as well. But it's just so, it's like, I decided I was going to do everything I could for my kid. And that led to posting everything we were doing online for fundraising purposes, really. And then all of a sudden we got a following, and then all of a sudden it made sense to, to start a website. And now we're here today, and and now having this website, it's good for my kid. So it's I'm learning, more than I ever would have before by interviewing folks like yourself. So I don't know. It's it's an interesting thought that you don't necessarily have to have everything laid out in front of you. Kind of once you decide that you're going to do this, it kind of comes, right?
The entire universe will conspire to help you on the other side of that decision. Whether you're faith-based and you believe it's revelation and God's doing it, or whether you are non-faith-based and you call it the universe, something magical happens on the other side of that decision. Then you don't sit there and go, well, I don't know, what's the answer? You Google it, right? And then you find experts and you call them, and you won't stop, because now you are driven and charged with something that is coming from an internal locus of control that is driving you, instead of like, woe is me, right? And it's really easy. And I don't want to be flippant about this, because it's really hard not to feel sorry for yourself when your vitality is zapped, right? When you are not feeling well, and say you have 10 bars of energy available, and because of some diagnosis or some disease or stress or whatever, 8 bars are already taken by your immunity and just like basic operations, and you only have 2 bars of energy left to make ends meet, then it's hard to have the resilience and the enthusiasm and the drive to be like, let's go get it, right? And it's like, and so you confront that kind of mindset where it's like, well, it's easy for you to say, I don't feel well. I will say, yes, okay, touche. But I've been on the side of this so many times to say, you know what? No, you still are on that side of that decision. And once you make the decision to do everything in your power or you will die trying, then you let go of all the crap and you find energy around every turn. You switch out this little thing where you stop eating the Danishes in the morning and you switch to a better diet, and you get a little bit more energy out of that. You rest when you're tired and you stop watching TV as your downtime, and you get a little bit more energy out of that. You switch from your coffee to some tea and you get a little bit more energy out of that. And then everything becomes a better life-affirming decision that then starts to boost your energy and your capacity and your resilience to then keep making better decisions and keep moving forward. But it's still on the other side of that decision to get better or die trying, right? And everything is on the line. And if you don't act like everything's on the line, then you're not on the battlefield. You are not the warrior right now. You are laying down. And so, for me, it's just I've been around this. The people that decide are the people that fight, are the people that come to this incredible series of revelation and awakenings and miraculous healings, much more so than the people that just reluctantly take the pills that some guy told them to take.
Yeah, no, it's a very common theme. For people that are on the other side of it, is it's crazily enough the best thing that ever happened to them, because. Because
it sucks. It sucks, right? Your people are called into it. I mean, look, you could have been standing on the beach in Puerto Rico, and all of a sudden your life is completely different one day, or an earthquake happens, or lightning strikes. And so this is lightning striking, right? And so when lightning strikes, your life is never the same. So now the question is, who are you? And who are you going to be on the other side of this?
Yeah. Yeah, and that, I suppose, might be a good segue to, when you decide to really take the plunge and do everything you need to do and figure out what all that is you need to do, you start realizing what all is bad in the world, and you want nothing to do with it. That's, like I said, it's not thinking about cancer as much per se as just. How can I be the best person I can be, and how can I, how can I avoid whatever it is that got me here in the first place? And I know, I haven't seen your movie Origins, but you brought that up before we started recording. That's a lot of what that was about. Was I suppose just what's wrong and. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts just in general on, how it is someone may have gotten to a cancer diagnosis based on the environment that, surrounds us today, and what you might want to avoid going forward, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean,
I
so
know you do.
yeah,
Yeah.
I did a 2.5 hour movie on the subject. So there are too many things, right? There's like millions of pounds of chemicals being dumped into our environment every day. Is nauseating how far we've come. And in the book, there's a great book called "The Emperor of All Maladies" on cancer. And one of the things that happened when one of the early researchers was like, "Hey, it looks like this lung cancer thing might be coming from cigarettes because the rise in cigarette smoking is kind of overlaying with this cancer diagnosis thing." And the guy looked at the data and he said, "You know what? The rise in nylon stockings is also right here in line. So maybe it was the nylon stockings." And so the point is, there's so much of it out there that it's hard to see. And what if it's not a single factor? What if it's not just glyphosate? What if it's all of it, right? What if it's a loss of chemical tolerance that's leading to systems breakdown, that's becoming an autoimmune issue? It's becoming, an epigenetic issue. There's so many things that we're learning right now that show that it is multifactorial. It's the water, it's the air, it's the additives in the food and all the stuff. And so you get to the point where you're like, oh man, it's overwhelming. Like we've killed it. We've poisoned this thing. And then you're left with a choice. Am I going to roll over and die in some sort of fatalism, which a lot of people do, and just be like, we've destroyed it, the earth will be fine. I hear this a lot in our Facebook threads, is these people that are just kind of like resolved to being fatalistic and being like, humans suck, we destroyed everything, the earth will be fine, we're going to go extinct. And it's just like, great, thanks very much. I got a 3.5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I'm not hearing that. Get out of the way. If that's your opinion, roll over and die now, get out of the way, because I've got a world to save. And so then the question becomes, are you contributing to that? What can you do to resolve that? I'm working with a group. I'm very proud of this. We helped break the story in 2015. There's a group of concerned parents here in my local town that there was a higher incidence of brain cancer in their community. And they started looking at it being like, what the heck is this? So they got together, talked to a couple toxicologists about like glyphosate and, which used to be Agent Orange really, and some of these things that are being sprayed in the public parks, got together with some university professors. And they're like, yeah, this stuff is nasty. Why are we spraying it on the soccer field in the baseball diamonds? And so they went to the local school district and they got the school district to ban them. And then they found a councilwoman in the local, municipal, city hall, and they got all toxic pesticides banned from the entire city, parks and public areas. And it was just like, oh, that was easy. And so, they developed a playbook. And so we've helped them over the last couple of years, and we're going to be helping them a lot more this year. Not be like, oh, look, you guys are such heroes, great for you. But how did you do that exactly? And how can I do that in my town? Now there's towns all over the US and the world that are following this playbook and getting these toxic pesticides kicked out of their municipalities because the kids were getting cancer, right? So that's just a really powerful, homegrown example of how instead of rolling over and saying that the sky is falling, you just get mobilized, you stop buying that crap, and then you get your city officials to stop buying it on your behalf with your tax dollars. And now all of a sudden, those cities are way cleaner and healthier to live in, right? And so, the answer isn't to roll over and die. The answer is to be a mama bear and a papa bear and step up and do something about it. And once you've been on the other side of that decision, there's all sorts of resources. Like, I'll give you that playbook. You know what I mean? Like, there are all sorts of heroes that I've put my cameras on since I started, I left medicine to, do media because I felt like we were losing the propaganda game in healthcare, and help people understand that there's all sorts of hope and positive stories out there on the other side of the decision that you have to make to stop feeling sorry for yourself and get up and be a part of the solution.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned that about they're starting to put it together with the cigarettes, but then, oh wait, no, it's like, you watch a movie about EMFs and there's a graph, like, the rise in EMFs and the rise of cancer, and look at this graph. But then you watch a movie about glyphosate, or you watch a movie about just, all the chemicals in general, and they all have that same graph. And then on the flip, and then once you start tuning into all that stuff, it's I hear a lot of people just get, well, everything causes cancer, and they just, it gets so overwhelming that they just, they give up, they don't want to hear about it anymore, and they almost just go back to doing whatever they were doing, or maybe kind of half-assing it, trying to be healthy, because it's just too much. But I don't know, for me it was like, well, it's, what else should you be focused on, really? And you find an alternative to everything, and it's not like there's no hope. I mean, we're right now building a house in the middle of the woods, away from neighbors. Hardwiring. We have Ethernet ports in every room, and building healthy materials and healthy building materials, I should say, and all that stuff. And I mean, that's kind of the the climax of the last 3.5 years, where that's headed for us. But I mean, day one, we had a huge garbage bag, and we just got rid of everything in the house that may have been bad, and got our EMF meter and started figuring out. Actually, we got the EMF meter before, but yeah, you just kind of start taking things one by one, and there are alternatives to just about, I mean, not just about, to everything, and ways to avoid or mitigate and all that stuff. And
there's products that are really great. We had this when we first moved in. We had some challenges with my son because we had bought a new house and we'd moved in, and I knew better, but I kind of let it go because my wife was really adamant about this carpet. Like I did this, like I went and found the like organic, non-toxic carpets and all that. And they felt like sheep's butt, it was just like, it wasn't great. And so my wife just like lobbied harder, and I was just too busy at work and I was looking away. So we got the normal carpet, and then she ordered all the furniture, and I wasn't paying attention. And all of a sudden, like the house is outgassing like crazy. And, we're not feeling well. The kid's having some behavioral stuff. And I was just like, what, oh my God, what are we doing? Right. And so we just start cleaning up all the stuff that had shown up in the house that we were huffing paint on. Right. And so, you look at all these things that are in your blind spot, and look at me. I've been in the industry for years. It snuck up in my house because my wife didn't care until it became an issue. And I didn't care enough because we weren't sick. And then all of a sudden you start to see a couple symptoms in your kid being like, weird behavioral stuff. And you're like, what is this? And then you realize that you're smothering yourself with toxic chemicals. So now it's like, you just buy bamboo floor, and you don't use carpets that way. And, I travel with silver lined clothing when I'm flying because I don't want the EMF exposure because I fly too much. Right. And so, there's a gajillion ways to protect yourself once you realize that it's the only game in town, right? And then you just start shopping better, you start building better, you start insulating better. And it doesn't mean you have to go up in the woods. Like I'm jealous that you are, because I'm naturally like a mountain guy. But I live in town. I got to be close to an airport. I make movies. But my house is like, we took out our lawn. We got get an amazing garden. We've insulated all the walls, with just basic stuff so that we don't have EMF exposure. We've taken the toxic crap out. I don't let people buy toys for the kids that are lead paint and crap from China. You know what I mean? And so you just control the flow, and you get a happier, healthier family.
Yeah. Yeah, and that being said, somehow we managed to find a place that was literally in the middle of the woods, but we're still 10 minutes from Whole Foods, so
that's amazing.
That's amazing. The best of both worlds, and and we live in Park City. It's Lord works in mysterious ways. The journey brought us here, and couldn't be happier with where we are. That's for sure.
Amazing.
I suppose we're running about towards the end. There's a couple questions I always ask everyone at the end, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say to it. Pedram, if you could boil everything you knew down into 3 golden rules, and those golden rules would be to help you stay healthy and disease-free or become healthy and disease-free, what would those rules be?
Number 1 would be rest when you're tired and sleep often. Number 2 would be only eat things that came from the earth. And number 3 would be find your joy and your passion, because that operating system will drive everything else for life-affirming, better decisions.
That's a big one. Yeah. No. And that's something I tell people all the time is, in the midst of everything going on, especially if you're trying to become healthy and disease free, it's you got to find out you got to figure out what's important to you. Yeah, because that's what keeps you going. That's what keeps you going. And lastly, just to kind of round everything out, we kind of covered the gamut here. But if you just had any kind of final thought or sentiment that maybe we haven't covered, or that just to kind of round everything out, whatever it want to be, just for anyone listening to this going through cancer, either for themselves or for a loved one that you just like to impart to them, that'd be a good way to take it out.
There's a word that I like to use a lot. It's called agency. It's your ability to self-actualize and make decisions and make the locus of control come from you. And so it's really easy with, we live in a middleman society, right? Like, I need the priest to talk to God. I need the doctor to tell me how to be healthy. I need the nutritionist to tell me how to eat. And so it's incredibly disempowering, because you can't know anything or do anything on your own. And so you're relying on other people to tell you what to do, which then makes it a really confusing world to live in, because everyone's telling you what to do. And, everything is either, right or fake news, and it's hard to tell the difference. And, we live in a world where information has now been upended, where you can't even trust news sources from whatever side. This isn't a red team, blue team thing. It's just everyone is playing a propaganda game, trying to tell you what to do. And in that, people are just stuck in the middle, like zombified. So the answer is to make a decision to live life fully, and then lean into it, and then stop waiting for people to tell you what to do, but go gather information and find things that ring true and try them, and don't be a victim to saying, well, that guy did this and it didn't work. You can't be a victim. You have to draw your sword and charge. And that comes from the word agency. You are ultimately responsible for your life, and everyone else here is here to help or get out of the way.
That's beautiful. That's that's certainly a good way to tie everything up. Pedram, oh, you know what? Before I forget, do you want to give? I don't think we actually mentioned Prosperity, your movie, but I think it would be a good, on the order of avoiding all this bad stuff and encouraging the good stuff in your life and the world around you. One, do you want to give a quick little 30-second plug for what that movie is all about, and then just let everyone know where would you point them for all things Pedram Shojai?
Sure. So when we finished our last movie, Origins, it was really about like being in control of what goes in your body and what you're exposed to. One of the kind of premises that we kind of brought up at the end was, listen, you vote with your dollars. So, you can choose to go to the farmer's market, or you could choose to buy the packaged crap at Kroger's. And, we kind of ended on that. And then I decided, after I kind of caught my breath, to go to the next level is like, okay, what then would be the logical conclusion to this is, can this premise, if we tested this premise, would it actually be real? So I followed the leaders of the conscious capitalism movement around for a couple years and looked at, this premise of voting with your dollars and leaving your money in a better bank and all these things, and really found a powerful, encouraging story that's already happening and emerging. And if people knew about it, they'd already be part of the new economy. They'd already be supporting this beautiful world that's being born out of this kind of post-industrial mess that we're trying to shake off. And so it is a reality. And the sooner you look at it and be a part of it, it becomes a reality for you, and it starts to grow. So the movie's called Prosperity. You can see it all at well.org. So that's where I'm the founder of well.org. We'll have that on, I think it'll still on the home page. And then for my other kind of books and stuff, it's theurbanmonk.com.
We will link to all things in the show notes. Pedram, this has been really cool. Gonna have a hard time figuring out what to title this episode, but maybe
story of my life.
Ones. Thanks so much for coming on, Pedram.
Thank you, Ryan.
There you go, everyone. I really thought that was a good one to come back from the break with into season 2 of this show, and I really hope you got something out of it and are going to go transform into that person you need to be. As always, show highlights, my thoughts on how the interview pertains to childhood cancer, and links to all resources can be found at mykidcurescancer.com/Pedram-Shojai. Pedram is spelled Pedram, Shojai, Shojai. And if you know someone that could stand to hear this episode, that's also an easy place to send them to download the audio or watch the video. As always, if you want to help us out with what we're doing here, mykidcurescancer.com/crowd sponsor, all one word, is the place to do that. Lord willing, we'll see you next week with naturopathic oncologist Heather Paulson, where we'll be talking about minimizing damage from conventional cancer treatment, avoiding negative interactions, and just all around how to get the best out of both worlds. Music, as always, was provided by the Fat Rat and the Tasty Network. All production and editing was done by my partner in crime, Teddy Sternagel. If you're going through cancer, no matter what, you've got to just keep going. This is Ryan Sternagel signing out for now. God bless and Godspeed.